Now, I'm not affiliated with any of the products that I'm going to talk about today outside of BPN products, supplements, training app. It's BPN products and then everything else, but I'm not affiliated with any of the other products. Some of these products I had been affiliated with in the past, but I'm not any longer outside of BPN products. So there's nothing that really holds me to or ties me to Garmin, but I have found that I enjoy the watch. I enjoy the options that they have. It's been very reliable for me. The technology is great. The apps work well, and it integrates very seamless with the other pieces of tech or software that I use throughout my day. And my Garmin watch evolution has changed and advanced over the years. You know, what's interesting is my first introduction to Garmin actually was when I was in the Army. And when I was in the Army, I wore a G-Shock watch. So I didn't even wear a GPS watch. When we would go out and run for morning PT sessions, when I was a platoon leader in the infantry, we'd go run and I didn't clock any of our mileage or no pace. I knew that like we had from this time to complete PT, we had to be back at a certain time. So I'd run out a distance that I knew that when we ran back, we'd be back in time, that PT was over for that day. But when I was in the Army, I never tracked pace. I never tracked mileage, any stats, any of those things. And when I was in the military, the PT test was push-ups, sit-ups, 2-mile run. And when I finished that 2-mile run, every time we got tested, I didn't know what my time was going to be until I crossed the finish line, because I had a G-Shock watch that I wasn't, able to monitor pace or time or anything like that. But my first introduction to Garmin actually was when I was in the military, and I was in a mechanized infantry company. And being in a mechanized infantry company, we were on Bradley fighting vehicles. And those Bradley fighting vehicles would, maneuver over terrain in ranges and patrols. And then we would dismount and we had to move through the wood line and reach a certain objective. And the way that I knew where we were at while we were moving outside of terrain association was using a map and then using a Garmin GPS watch that I wore on my wrist. And the only thing that it would display, I can't remember what series of watch it was. It might have been a Forerunner. It was a Garmin watch, and it was this big thing that was probably 1 inch in height and like 3 inches wide. And it took up this big chunk of my wrist. And I rarely actually wore it on my wrist, but I would wear it on my kit, on my chest. And it would display grid coordinates. So it would tell me exactly what the grid coordinates that we were at in our location, that I could then pinpoint on a map to determine where we were at and where we needed to go next based off of our location. That was my first introduction to Garmin. And I thought that's all Garmin did and was. And maybe it was at the time. But I didn't know anyone really when I was in the military that was wearing a GPS watch. We were all wearing just like these analog G-Shock watches. And then when I got out of the military, started running, I tried all of these one-off brands that I was coming across, didn't fall in love with any of them. And then my first Garmin watch, I want to say I got when I was training for my first Ironman in 2019 and 2020, which is Ironman Florida. And it was the Garmin Forerunner 745. I remember this watch vividly. And that's when I started using it to track runs and pace. And I would look at some data, but really I just wanted to to monitor pace, clock mileage, and then just have real-time immediate feedback of how fast I was going, and then using the heart rate data with a grain of salt to monitor what sort of effort I was putting out. And then from the Garmin Forerunner 745, I then went to the Phoenix Pro Series. And I first had a Garmin Phoenix Pro 6, and then I want to say 7. And after coming from the Forerunner to the Phoenix Pro Series, I was mind blown. Just the advancements in software and technology, what it could do, what it displayed, what information it shared. And I was like, this watch is everything I ever need. It's perfect. And this is actually when I started learning more about monitoring heart rate and using the heart rate data to determine what sort of effort or pace I needed to put out to improve my aerobic capacity. And this is really where I started learning all about the Maffetone 180 method and formula. And I've talked about this many times, but I'll share it with you briefly. One of the biggest mistakes I made early on when I first started running is I was running way too hard. All of my runs. There was no such thing as an easy run in my vocabulary. Every run, Monday through Sunday, was to run as hard and fast as possible. And I would blow up. I mean, I remember some of those early runs. Early meaning like when I first started running and getting involved in the sport, in the space, where it'd be a normal Tuesday. There were 6 miles that I was going to do. I'd go out running so hard that by like mile 3, I'd have to take a little breather. My hands would be like up against a tree, taking a breath. I'd catch my breath, heart rate would come down a little bit, and then I'd go out and run as hard as possible again. So by the time I finished this run in the morning, I was smoked. Heart rate was probably at like 175, 180 the entire time. And I wasn't getting any faster. I thought that the only way to get faster was to run harder and run faster. And then I learned the hard lesson that the way you actually get faster is by running slower. The way you actually get faster is by running your easy days, your easy runs, easy. And that's running below your max aerobic heart rate. So there's this formula called the Maffetone 180 formula. You take 180 minus your age. That number that you get is your max aerobic heart rate, not your max heart rate, your max aerobic heart rate, meaning that if you want to run in an aerobic zone, an easy run, your heart rate should be below that number that the calculation and the equation provides. And you want to do this in real time. So what I started doing is I got a Garmin chest strap, a Garmin heart rate chest strap monitor, which I highly recommend that every new runner or advanced runner has. And you wear it around your chest. There's some heart rate monitors now that you can wear around your arm, your bicep. And that syncs via Bluetooth to your watch. So as you're running, you can change your Garmin display to show your pace in real time and your heart rate in real time. Now your watch is going to be able to pull heart rate data from your wrist, but it's not very accurate. And I would take that with a grain of salt. You want to either pull it from an external monitor on your chest or on your arm. And this is where I really started to make a lot of great progress and strides in my running, was making sure that I was running below my max aerobic heart rate on my easy days and actually running slower on my easy days. But this allowed me to actually build an aerobic foundation. This allowed me to get faster and run faster for longer. So get a chest strap monitor, sync it to your Garmin watch, make sure your easy days you're running below your max aerobic heart rate, and your watch will show you in real time pace and heart rate. And if your heart rate starts to elevate based off the display on your watch, start running a little bit slower. You'll notice that when you hit hills or some obstacles, some resistance, some inclines, your heart rate will naturally elevate. Pull back speed a little bit. Put out a lesser effort to maintain that lower heart rate, because that's how you build this engine. It's how you build this aerobic base and foundation.